CBS News correspondent Giovanna Drpic joins us now live from the CBS Broadcast Center. Good morning, Giovanna.
Good morning, Steve. Well, this morning, Wall Street is hoping to bounce back after Tuesday's massive sell-off. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's comments about interest rates helped rally Wall Street. News of the trade truce sent stocks in this country higher. Tech companies led the way. The Dow jumped nearly 288 points. Stacey Abrams has made a big deal about Brian Kemp, her opponent, being, if you will, the king of voter suppression in Georgia. Early voting, as you mentioned, topped 2 million. Now, if you compare that to 2014, it was just under 1 million. President Trump is in Georgia for one reason alone: to help close the deal for Republican Brian Kemp. After going through the analysis and simplifying it for you, it really ends up being a series of gimmies and takebacks. Why should folks at home care? Well, let's face it. Who wants to get overcharged? Now, as you just heard, there are many families here in Georgia rely on the sales tax holiday to buy things like school supplies, notebooks, that sort of thing. And Representative Jones says the fee is fully refundable when a person files their Georgia state personal income taxes. And if it becomes law, the Georgia Restaurant Association estimates that it could generate some $11 million in revenue for state and municipal government. Good morning, Anne Marie. This morning, details of the 90-day trade truce between the U.S. and China remain cloudy. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said China could immediately cut tariffs on U.S. car imports and start to roll back retaliatory tariffs on U.S. agricultural imports. News of the trade truce sent stocks in this country higher. Tech companies led the way. The Dow jumped nearly 288 points, and the S&P 500 added 30 points. The NASDAQ composite finished nearly 111 points higher. And speaking of the overall economy, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell says despite solid economic progress, challenges do remain. Indonesia's Lion Air says it's reconsidering its orders from Boeing. This, of course, follows the crash of a Lion Air Boeing 737 that killed 189 people in October. Well, this morning, Wall Street is hoping to bounce back after Tuesday's massive sell-off. Markets were closed yesterday as part of a national day of mourning for former President George H.W. Bush. Trade issues between the U.S. and China apparently played a role in the arrest of a top executive of Chinese telecom giant Huawei. A bail hearing is scheduled for tomorrow. Recreational marijuana is now legal in Michigan. The new law passed by voters in November took effect at midnight. Michigan is the 10th state, plus, of course, Washington, D.C., to legalize recreational pot. A new survey from leadership training company Vital Smarts asked people what causes their holiday stress. Coming in at number 1, keeping up with everything piling up at year's end. Waymo, Google's self-driving car project, began a limited ride-sharing service in the Phoenix area. The service is called Waymo One. The color of the year for 2019 is living coral. I guess that's opposed to non-living coral, right? The Pantone Color Institute, which has been choosing its color of the year for 2 decades, says living coral has a saturated orange base with a golden undertone. Pantone said it's emotional nourishment, like a big hug. And who couldn't use a big hug, Anne Marie?
That's true. I didn't think hug when I saw it, though. I thought bridesmaid's dress. That's what I thought.
Bridesmaid's dress. Sounds about right.
Exactly.
But we'll take the hug. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's comments about interest rates helped rally Wall Street. In a speech to the Economic Club of New York yesterday, Powell appeared to suggest the Fed may hold the line on interest rates next year. Of course, President Trump had blamed Powell and the Fed's interest rate hikes for the recent stock market slump. The Dow saw its biggest gains in 8 months, climbing 617 points. The S&P 500 rose 61 points, and the NASDAQ shot up 208 points. Stacey Abrams has made a big deal about Brian Kemp, her opponent, being, if you will, the king of voter suppression in Georgia. This is a constant campaign talking point. He vehemently denies it. He says that he is simply following the law and he's preventing voter fraud. Now, the reason why this is important is because there was a group, the judge sided with a Muslim group and an Asian American group who said, wait a minute, you rejected our absentee ballot applications because of a mismatched signature. Brian Kemp said, this is a minuscule amount compared to all of the voters, and if you make us revisit this topic, well, that's just going to be an administrative nightmare. Brian Kemp and other election officials could not argue that it's a tiny amount and then say it would be an administrative burden, that one doesn't equal the other. This means that despite what the candidates are doing, those ads, all the money that's being poured into this race and so forth, it's not moving the needle. So what's going to move the needle in one candidate's direction or another in the last 2 weeks? Plus, in Georgia, to win an election outright, you have to win by 50% plus one. In all of these polls, if you believe them, they haven't gotten that. So that means that November 7th, the day after the midterms, we'll still be talking about this and we'll be going on to the next round, the runoff, December 4th. A group of Jewish Americans is suing Airbnb in U.S. federal court. The 18 plaintiffs accuse the home rental company of religious discrimination. And Burger King is going to the dogs. The fast food chain says it's introducing the dog purr. Yes, the dog purr. This is a group that Stacey Abrams founded to increase minority participation. She said, you know what, we're not going to try to go after those Republican voters. We have enough voters whose voices haven't been heard in the past. We need to go after them. So she registered more than 200,000 people. Both are polarizing figures, both are controversial figures, and we just don't know which side it's going to help. We're also watching the 6th district race. Now, you'll recall, this was a huge race last year. It was between Democrat John Ossoff and Republican Karen Handel. Karen Handel ended up winning that race, and now she's trying to defend that. She's the incumbent. President Trump is in Georgia for one reason alone, to help close the deal for Republican Brian Kemp. Now, just like former President Barack Obama was in Atlanta on Friday trying to seal the deal for the Democrat, Stacey Abrams, they both are trying to help shore up their bases. Immigration so far, if you believe the polls, has not really registered as the #1 or #2 issue with Georgia voters. Now, with Kemp's Republican base, they will say it's very important, and Kemp has made it a cornerstone of his campaign, talking about putting Georgians first and that he was going to crack down on illegal immigration. He's talked extensively about that, so he has made it an issue. Her strategy is considered unusual. She's not trying to pick off Republican voters, trying to change their minds. Her strategy is to concentrate on the new voters, and a lot of those new voters are minorities. As you can see, we're opening the trading day down by a lot, down more than 379 points at this point. And of course, this follows Tuesday's massive sell-off. Tuesday, we lost 800 points on the Dow, but right now, down more than 371 points. We'll be following that closely throughout the day. Now, in other news, British Parliament released documents showing how Facebook allegedly used users' personal information as a competitive weapon. A nationwide recall of some blood pressure medications has now been expanded. Check your medicine cabinets. Pharmaceutical firm Mylan is pulling the drugs, which all have valsartan in their name. The company says the medication contains trace amounts of a chemical linked to cancer. Now, the drugs were sold between March of last year and as recently as last month. And you guys are going to love this story. Tyson Foods released predictions for the major food trends in 2019. So what are they? Well, according to the Trend Tellers Council at Tyson, people are looking for personalized foods to promote health and beauty. They also want more information about what's in their food and where it's grown. Reasonable enough, right? Well, another trend topping the list, people are looking for protein in other forms. What kind of forms, you ask? Well, according to Tyson, demand for edible insects could be on the rise. What happened to the protein bar? I guess it's not exciting enough.
Oh, yummy.
Just down
I'd rather have a protein
with the
bar,
French
if we're being
fries.
honest here.